Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Somi's Chai and Chat. Have you ever wondered where the taste of our food resides? Well, according to Gandhi, it doesn't reside in our tongue but in our minds. Today's episode, we will go over his experiments in dietetics. Stay tuned. As Gandhi started experimenting more deeply with his life and experiences, he began making a lot of changes both internally and externally. Externally, he mentions about going into becoming minimalist, which we will cover in another episode. And internally, it is about mostly taking food to start with, and vegetarianism. And this goes even more deeper, not just restricted to consumption of rice or vegetables and milk and etc., but reasoning behind it, also not because of religious purpose, but more in terms of reasoning based on the arguments or the conversations he was having, and also some of the books that he was reading. Even to this day, these conversations feels like an evergreen conversation wherein there are so many people who are pro eating meat and pro vegan and staying vegetarian, and dietitians and governments intervening in between, saying you have to have certain type of food in certain amounts in order to be healthy and fit. Some of the interesting and new concepts that I found in his writing were even giving up on the spices. According to some medical writing that he came across, even rejecting of spices and condiments was supposed to be very good for our bodies, as we evolved without them, and man was eating fruits or vegetables as is without adding much of any external taste to make it yummy on our tongues while consuming. The new term that I came across is called, in quotes, frugivorous animal, that human being can only take mother's milk until upon he gets teeth, and once the kid starts getting teeth, they can move to having solid foods. From the dilemma and from the internal thoughts that is expressed, it appears like Gandhi was more talking about avoiding processed foods and adopting more of the wholesome and fresh food, edible foods that were available for consumption. Remember, he was still a student when he was doing all these experiments with his diet, living in England, and he was not having a lot of money in his hands, and still having to do all this, going through all this. He says economic impact, there was some when he was trying to experiment with all these things. It is interesting that even today we have gone many circles and come back to the same spot where he is, and giving up on starch, giving up on gluten, giving up on bread, giving up on sugar, giving up on sweets, giving up on caffeine, and experimenting with how we feel. However, today's media has a lot of influence. I think we watch a lot of videos with people giving their feelings or giving their outputs on their dietary changes, and we see science papers, research papers, and media putting out a lot of new information or the same information recycled and put it in a different way, and we go through the same things yet again. Also, one more interesting point is the definition of vegetarianism. According to Gandhi, in his time, back then, even there were 3 types of vegetarians. That is, the people who would consume fish and eggs, people who would not consume milk and eggs as well, and today we call them vegan, and people who consumed milk and eggs but not fish. And Gandhi says his mother's definition of vegetarianism was what he believed in, and his vow to his mother that he made before leaving India kept him bound to going back to what he firmly believed when there were challenges that were coming up. Finally, the part where the interpretation of the vow or the pledge that's being taken, how that can be twisted and made it into finding a loophole so that you can still go through it. So for example, if I say I'm fasting on Mondays, I might think fasting means not consuming solid food. So I can go left, right, and center drinking milk, drinking fruit juices, smoothies, and all those things full of sugar, and really not consider that it's impacting my fasting at all. However, fasting means just letting your body recover from processing of any food, and there are contextual ways of what fasting means, and it's very relative from person to person. If you ask one person, it's very different fasting compared to another person. It's what we believe in. What is fasting to me may not be exactly what is fasting to you. So twisting and turning just to make a space or find a loophole so that according to the vow or the pledge, you are still following what you're following, but you're also kind of compromising in some way. So that is what he has brought up, and I was planning to reflect on that topic, and I was thinking about my fasting days. I usually fast on Mondays, and there are days when I have consumed fruits, and I think about, did I break my fasting or did I not break my fasting? And there are days where I eat food in end of the day because I'm really starving or I don't have energy. And there are days I don't eat anything. I just live on water with some lime juice. So now I want to ask my listeners, take a moment to think about what are the vows that you have made, and when you want to keep up with it, have you taken a shortcut or have you tried to find loopholes so that Practically you are, or theoretically you are still following the vow, but practically there is some shortcut. It's like, I'm still doing it, but there is this much thing I can do, because it's told by somebody else, and that is what is bounding us or binding us to follow it. If it comes from within ourselves, then I think we will keep up that vow or the pledge, that whatever we have taken. All right, with this, I think we have come to an end of this episode. We will continue tomorrow with another story or another part of Gandhi's life, and reflect on something that we can see in our life. Bye-bye.